I have a landlord asking that their tenant stated they mailed the check and they haven't gotten it. What does the landlord do? Hi, my name is Rob Wells. I'm the Landlord War on TikTok and YouTube. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to our videos. Well, that question is really going to depend on whether the landlord had issued a 3-day notice to pay rent or quit yet, or a notice hasn't been issued. So the deal is, if in California, if your rent is delinquent, a landlord could issue a 3-day notice to tell their tenant that they need to pay the rent or they need to vacate within 3 court and business days, basically, excluding weekends and holidays. Okay, so we've talked on the channel before that if a landlord issues a 3-day notice and their address is one where the tenant personally cannot deliver a rent payment, there are some presumptions that work against a landlord in the Code of Civil Procedure, and that's going to be CCP 1161 subdivision 2, about addresses where a tenant can't pay in person. Okay, so if this tenant stated that they mailed the payment to you and you issued a 3-day notice, and the tenant can bring a certificate of mailing or proof of mailing showing that the payment was made within the 3 days provided in the 3-day notice, then there's a conclusive presumption, basically meaning that it is presumed against the landlord that that tenant gave the landlord the money within the 3 days, whether the landlord receives the rent or not. And that presumption is designed, in effect, basically to encourage landlords to have an address where rent can be made in person, because if payment can be made in person, the tenant bears the burden of showing that the landlord actually receives the rent. Okay, and that's why I always tell landlords, make it where the tenant can deliver you rent in person and provide other forms of payment, such as a lot of landlords and people now do, like electronic payments. They pay on an online portal or Zelle or do bank deposits, so you can avoid this issue of the rent got lost in the mail and now it's nowhere to be found. Okay, if this landlord was getting the tenant stated that they mailed the payment and no notice was issued, I would recommend that the tenant make the payment in person. I'd tell the tenant, come to my office, give him, we'll be here, cancel, put a stop order or stop payment on the check or whatever and whatnot. But this kind of happens a lot, and this is why I don't like mailing payments in the mail when, especially if there's a deadline, like on a 3-day notice to pay rent. So I always tell landlords, make sure that you at least, your tenants can pay in person, if at all possible. Okay, some landlords, they want to do the PO box jam, and that's cool. Okay, but you have that presumption working against you in the Code of Civil Procedure. So landlords, if you're facing a non-payment of rent eviction and you're in the Northern California area, feel free to reach out. Our website's down below. You can book a free case review there, and we might be able to help you out. Put your comments, questions down below. Until next time, folks, we'll talk to you then. Thanks.